All right, welcome back To Be Fair, a podcast hosted by Aaron, and that's me. And we are here doing some special episodes for Pride Month. It is LGBTQAI plus. I did it. I said it all. Um,
Lot of
and it is the month that we celebrate the history and the community that is the queer community. I usually just kind of go right to the queer community because we embrace so many different types of people. So I'm very excited today. I am meeting up with a friend via Google Meet with a friend who actually grew up in the same hometown as me, about a decade difference. We were just talking about that. It's Mr. Nathan MacDowell. How are you doing, Nate?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh my God, it's super hot up here. I don't know what it's like down there.
It's pretty warm, yeah.
Okay, I mean, yeah, Minneapolis and Grand Rapids are really not that far off temperature wise. It's not like you're in Texas or something.
Right.
Yeah, which actually one of my other guests that's going to be on this is from Florida, so it'll be really interesting to hear what it's like down there.
For
Uh,
sure.
but yeah, we're talking about the fact that we grew up in the jolly old land of Grand Rapids. Um, that unfortunately doesn't celebrate enough queer history, being the fact that they have one of the biggest gay icons in movie history, like that, like a history of her here, Judy. I'm talking about the infamous Judy Garland. Not infamous. She's not infamous. She is like massively famous. But yeah. Anyway, so I make jokes that they never capitalize on that. Okay, as a member of the Alphabet Mafia, so people are calling it now.
Or
Have you heard that?
yeah.
Okay. As a member of that, and from our town, how is your level of Judy Garland knowledge?
Honestly, it's not great.
It's fine. You're not as much of a stereotype gay as I am.
It's okay. Yeah,
No, yeah.
really, I don't know much. I really should know more because one of my best friends, her dad was the curator at the Judy Garland Museum for many years, and
I guess I know who you're speaking of. I actually just texted her a moment ago. We're working on another project.
oh,
Yeah,
great.
yeah. You'll know more about that soon. But she anyway. Yes, you'd think so because she obviously would have some of that trickle down effect of knowledge.
Yeah,
Um,
or something. I should know more, but no, I don't.
I just was fascinated by her because as a child, as one that was born in the '80s and kind of started to develop memories at the end of the '80s, Judy Garland Festival was celebrated a lot bigger, if I recall, or
Hmm.
maybe just because I was a 4 and a 5 year old at the time, it seemed bigger. I don't know. Like it was a pretty big deal, but it was. There was a parade. Mickey Rooney used to come. And I mean, and there was so much. There was different celebrations, and it was really amazing, actually. And so I think that was what led me to be like, I want this. I want to be that famous person from the town that they would celebrate the fact that I'm from. Is that a
That's a
weird dream?
no, that's a great dream to have. Follow in her
Uh,
footsteps, her red
right.
shoed footsteps.
So we met in a very interesting way, you and I, through Facebook, I believe. Um, if I recall, I think somehow when Facebook first started doing the suggested friends, and we were all theater people. You were young, I think senior in high school, and I think you were starting to come out, maybe.
Around
Well,
that, yeah,
I'll let you share that, whatever you want to share there. But I think at the time when you and I started chatting, we were talking a lot about Spring Awakening,
I'm
the
sure.
musical.
Yeah.
You were like fascinatingly obsessed with Spring Awakening, and I was just about to work on a production of it.
Oh, really?
So
I don't
yeah,
remember that super well, but
okay, but I remember we were chatting, and you were in Brazil.
I was right after high school. Yeah.
That's okay. So that's when we met. Is you were there, and I still don't know what connected. I want to say it's because you were friends with my cousin Jacob and Katie Anderson.
Oh,
Right?
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and so somehow I don't know why, but it just like we connected, and then we became friends, and yeah, um, and suddenly I don't. Yeah, I guess that was the rest. We've just now. kind of known each other since and know like been in each other's orbits. But that's I just wanted to give some background there. That it's like not like you and I have ever been like super best friends, but we've made ourselves pretty good friends
Yeah.
through the last decade, and I got to watch you become a little baby gay, and now you're an adult gay man
Now I'm an adult. Yep. I
living
broke.
your best life. So let's talk about it. Let's see here. Can I hear a little bit about your story? What it was like to for you growing up in this town, and
Sure. That's actually one of the reasons why I thought it'd be interesting to join your podcast. That, I think a lot of people, especially from small towns, they have a lot of stories of rejection and pain and abuse. And my story is honestly nothing like that. I grew up with the greatest family, a really strong support system. I don't have a history in Grand Rapids of hearing the F slur or being bullied. I mean, I wasn't super out in school, but a lot of people knew, um, and it just never was that big of an issue. Mostly because I spent a lot of time just kind of blending in and didn't make a lot of waves or stand out too much. But I've just always had such a supportive family. A lot of people in town know my family. Well,
I
now
love your family.
many people know my family now that we've had the big flags in the yard.
I was
Um,
gonna bring that up. Yeah, that was
yeah,
definitely. Well, we'll get to that.
sure. But yeah, I've had a really, really great experience in Grand Rapids. I mean, there isn't, there aren't enough of us there. I think is the problem, and I think it really comes down to um, it just feels like there aren't enough community opportunities for the queer community in Grand Rapids, and so it's easy for us to say, you know what, it's time to move away.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I 100% agree with you. I mean, I've done it. I've left. You've left. You've gone to school in different areas and come back and gone. I mean, when you're first kind of out on your own. But I remember that, and then you ended up living here for many years, actually,
Yep.
setting up a little bit of your young adulthood life, kind of. Um, and then it was not too long ago that you decided to move back down to the city or down to the cities area and
Hmm.
set up a new life down there. And I can tell you, there's like so much of me that wants to leave this community again. I There was so many people when I first moved home back in 2016 uh, that went down to the cities were like, "Oh, why are you leaving? Blah blah blah. Why? What's you go back up there and it's just going to be full of hate all the time." I'm like, you know what? The world is full of hate. Like I'm not going to escape any hate anywhere. So I'm like, my problem that I had living down in the cities is that I lived in the Shakopee area. So unfortunately, many people in the cities, friends, family that I had down there, none of them wanted to come visit me. I would always have to trek up. And once you are down there, it is a pain in the butt to drive from different burbs, from different sides. You
Yeah.
know. Like I do not want to get on 494 if I don't have to. Like, there's no way that you could like you. I don't care if I was held up and hijacked and somebody had a gun to my head. I would be like, no, we would never get out of there.
I can say that because now that I've lived here for a little over a year, I have in a lot of ways acclimated, and it's really not that big of a deal to make a 20-minute drive through the cities now, but I hate driving through uptown. I,
Yes,
I think no matter what, you just find that one stretch that you're like, this is the worst because you hit every red light and there are these just these pedestrians and their audacity to just step out in the middle of traffic like
there.
care
Yes, there's like this frequency control issue that like does like the something blocks that frequency of communication, like the eyes and the pedestrian. Like here in our small towns, people are always like, I always feel really bad because like I'm at the stop waiting when cars are coming, I'm crosswalking and I have to wait my turn, or whatever. But if it's not at one of those ones where you can actually push the button, there's people are always so kind in these small towns. Just be like, wavy bye, and it's like, I just wish they'd turn because I feel bad because the time it takes me to cross, you could have done this 3 times.
uh-huh.
I So please go. I feel bad. Like, and there's like this, but yes, in the cities, especially where you're discussing, it's like there's just a communication barrier with everybody that is in traffic.
Yep.
So yeah, but that's not our conversation to talk about the driving situation in Minneapolis. But it could be a whole nother podcast.
Someday.
Um, so yeah, so I like the idea that I could move back there at some point, but one of my biggest flaws is that I have a big issue with that I'm working on with managing my money.
Mm,
Like I'm really terrible at budgeting or anything, and I'm trying to learn it, but it's not as easy as people would actually think it should be, especially for I don't want to lean on a crutch of a different uh, mental health issues that I have that sometimes do prevent. But I do want to make sure that those are known that I have a lot going on. I have ADHD for one.
sure.
It's one of my worst things that I have to try and manage. But then on top of it, that causes the anxiety and the depression. Just go. I mean, it's like, don't get in here because it's a mess. There's so much going on. But and a lot of that is because of the traumas I did deal with growing up in this area. However, I went to high school in Reamer, Minnesota, which, yeah, you're familiar. I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm not. Okay, I'm hearing you. There you are. So yeah, so I went to school there, and so I didn't come out.
Sure.
I mean, people pretty much were telling me I was gay before I even decided if I was. I was raised very religiously, in a very fundamental Christian family, and so and for some reason, I took it so much more serious. Like I was like, Jesus, oh sweet Jesus, take me home, kind of like Christian. Like I wish I was a fantastic Southern belle in a way that I just tried to pretend I was, but it was in no way as fantastical as that. But I I was very much into thinking that. And so when I started kind of realizing that I was gay, like there was no argument. There was no argument that I was gay in my from my own thing. I want to say it was probably about like 11, 12, or 13 really is where I really started to figure out what that meant. And it was, did you ever, I know you're younger than me, so I don't know if you ever saw Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman.
No,
Okay. Do you know who Terry Hatcher is?
I'm really bad with my celebrities. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Nope, that's okay. I love talking about him, so this is fun.
Great.
Did you ever watch Desperate Housewives?
I saw a few episodes growing up.
But not enough to know some of the characters, so that wouldn't help either. Okay, but anyway, so Terry Hatcher played Lois Lane in this TV series that was in the early '90s, called Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman. It was very rom-com esque superhero show, but for me, I was a very young child, and this was my first Superman. Like the generation before me had Christopher Reeve, and I had Dean Cain, who right now we don't like because he is a huge Republican like creeper, but
Ooh.
um, he also used to host Ripley's Believe It or Not. Ironically, he played a gay guy in a movie, um, and but he was his physique, his dark hair. I mean, and if you saw him now, you'd be like, okay, Aaron has daddy issues, which are totally true, but um, there's another issue there. But no, Dean Cain at the time was like in his like mid to late 20s when that show was on, so he was had this full head of black hair, and it was
Yeah.
just Superman. And I mean, I was freaking obsessed with him. I knew I was obsessed with him. I literally had a Tiger Beat magazine. You know what Tiger Beats were, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I had that, and they gave addresses to different celebrities,
Sure.
but it was to their studios. So I sent a letter to Dean Cain, and I got a autographed card back from him. And I was so excited. I was going to school in a Christian school, and I pinned that thing on my bulletin board in my little cubicle at my Christian school. And because it had, oh yeah, no, people didn't suspect at that time. This was sixth grade. No one suspected yet. I mean, there was some suspicion from me, from my family, but no one really suspected with the Dean Cain thing. And so I was kind of like, okay. apparently I'm coming off as okay. No one's figuring this out yet. And then um, it just kind of started. I started seeing men differently. Like
Sure.
he was the gateway, and suddenly I would watch other shows and like I can't tell you these '90s hunks from like Baywatch and stuff like that. Beverly Hills 90210. Those were like my wet dreams.
Right.
Yes. So it wasn't until the TV show Dawson's Creek that actually gave me the courage to come out at 17. Like I'd been telling people had been pretty much saying I was gay, and I mean it was some of the kind of thing. So I was like, at this point, I might as well just confirm it for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well be like, yeah, y'all were right. Are you happy now? You shut up about it. But they didn't shut up about it. That was the thing. It's like it just got worse once it was confirmed because now I was a Santa. Like I ain't even touched another man yet. I have done nothing wrong. Like seriously, and that was when I started to really kind of lose my faith in the church too, because
Sure.
I tried to explain that I was, you know, praying every single day and night, reading my Bible and trying to figure out how to make the gay go away, and nothing worked. So I was like, clearly he wants me this way. So anyway, that's so yeah. So with the time that I was before when I left, it was the early 2000s. That's when I left for Duluth.
Okay.
Um, and at that time, it was still kind of a terrible place to be um, a young, new gay person because anyone else that was gay in our community, like there was one other guy, we were definitely not a um, compatible fit for each other, but we were friends, you know. Um,
Sure.
and but he, uh, yeah, it was a mess there. So I believe you might actually know who the person is, but I'm not going to say it over the
Fair
podcast.
enough.
But so anyway, they uh, so then there were other gay guys that like would want to just mess around, but they don't want to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I used to hook up with this one guy from ICC. Like, it was very interesting. It was a very interesting thing. But at that time, we were a little bit okay with these discrete things because it gave the need of, it fulfilled some kind of need that I guess I was in some sort of relationship.
Sure.
Yeah, it got ugly. And so I realized that I wasn't going to be able to figure out a lot more of who I was or grow as an actor in any way. Living, we lost you. There you are. But or grow as an actor or an artist in general until I moved to Duluth or somewhere else. And so I already had connections in Duluth, so I moved to Duluth. And I moved to the cities after that for like a year, but I was in Duluth for a long time. And I got to grow into who I am now in my time in Duluth, the people that I met there, which it was, I mean, it was literally night and day of a difference between what it's like to be in Grand Rapids, Minnesota and Duluth, Minnesota, and they're only 70 miles apart.
Yeah.
That's, and it is nice to know that we do live in a state that tends to be way more gay friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I used to hear rumor. Now I don't know I haven't confirmed this maybe, but I used to get told that per capita, people would think that San Francisco has way more LGBT members, but actually Minneapolis, St. Paul does.
That's interesting.
I would like to find a way to confirm that, and I think I should because now I've mentioned it on this podcast. But um, I heard it, and this had to have been years ago. Couldn't tell you how many.
Well, now you have homework for the night.
I know. I'm always giving myself homework on this thing. Somehow I do. Um, so okay, let's talk a little bit about the flags and the banners that your
Sure.
family is known for putting up, and uh, some of the drama that would go behind that because of showing the hate that still does infect this town really terribly.
Yeah.
Like I really like to bring light to the fact that there's a lot of amazing people in this community that are so supportive of people who are different in every way, shape, or form. And uh, so it's like it's very nice to know, and I know your family is like a huge like thing about it. If we ever had our own pride here, I would definitely make your family the grand marshals. I'm not kidding.
And they would proudly do it, I'm sure.
Oh my god, dude, would they ever?
Yeah,
Anyways, so yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that.
sure. So yeah, I guess to give a little bit more context, I mean, yeah, my family has always been really supportive of who I am. I was kind of sort of accidentally outed when I was younger.
And
Um,
there,
yeah, I mean, I had a bunch of like sort of soft coming outs.
okay,
Um, you know,
just the toe dip in the water kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people, at least who were around my age, I know it was really common to come out as bi first, and then you come out as gay, and there was sort of a progression there. And so I remember I would tell my parents that, I don't think that I am interested in men, but I wouldn't, if I found myself attracted to a man, I wouldn't deny myself those feelings.
That is, I mean, I think that's one of the most beautiful ways to put it.
Hmm.
So yeah, continue.
And so I think at the time I still kind of knew that I do have attractions to men, but it was sort of a way to introduce the idea to them and sort of gauge a reaction. And I never got any sort of negative pushback. My mom knew way before I did. It's interesting that you had the experience that people just told you, you're gay, because I had the experience that my mom, I think I was in like maybe fourth or fifth grade, and she asked me if I liked boys. And I was like, no, of course not. And at that time, I wasn't even really thinking about anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think my mom just always knew. And so,
Mannerisms kind of come into play.
yeah, and it's so interesting that that happens because I certainly, as a fourth or fifth grader who wasn't even thinking about a romantic partner at the time, it's interesting that I was, embodying some of those mannerisms and ways of speaking that are now sometimes kind of telltale. Now things are a little bit more complicated because as things become, as people are able to express themselves more freely, now gaydar doesn't work the way it used
Oh
to.
my god, thank you.
And I think that's a great thing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
wonderful that, you don't just look at one little thing that someone does and have to wonder,
Well,
are
I
they?
mean, now even straight identifying guys are painting their nails.
Yep.
And that used to be kind of one of those telltale thing. You were either probably a gay guy or a goth guy, like or maybe like into like emo stuff. But generally, you had kind of like a thing where we still were kind of in the freaks and weirdos category, so we
Sure.
still related with each other. But now, like I'm seeing some of the most masculine presenting cisgendered men, like heterosexual males, being way more interested in how they're coming across, and it's like I appreciate it. I
Yeah.
really do. Like I love seeing all of this. And can I just, I mean, this is a little bit of a sidebar from where we're at, but I really want to talk about just for a moment Little Nas X.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
do you follow him?
Not a lot, but I know who he is, and I see some of the stuff that he's doing. Yeah.
But you're familiar with like his most controversial like
Yeah.
contribution to his art of
Yeah.
recent time. Oh my god, I love that song and I love that music video. Probably for the same reasons, like of how I grew up very
Yeah.
similar, and he grew up similar to me. Um, and I'm appreciating to see how far this young gay man is coming into a career that is generally can like in that industry specific part of that industry can out come off very homophobic.
Hmm.
And so he's such an amazing, and he's so accepted into that community of people. And then, but like that is amazing. 10, 15 years ago, that would have been no, you don't get to
Oh my
cut.
God.
You can't be a gay person. You can be gay, but you have to do it off over here. Like it
Hmm.
cannot be part of your public image. Your public image, sorry, Shawn Mendes, you're with Camilo. I'm sorry. What did I say, Shawn Mendes? Sorry, that was a little joke there. People make the jokes that Shawn Mendes is gay and Camilla's just his beard.
Yeah.
I highly disagree. I think I'd like to consider Shawn Mendes pansexual. That just tends to lean towards women because I think that's what's expected of his career too.
Hmm.
But I would like to think that Shawn Mendes is a little bit more open. that generation just seems to be the ones that are just coming into their early 20s now.
Sure.
You know, it's like it's not that it doesn't feel like that long ago for you because it wasn't, right? For me, it still doesn't feel like that long ago either, and that's almost 20 years ago that I was a
Oh,
young little. Yeah, this year's gonna be like this next summer will be my 20-year class anniversary class reunion.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was just getting posts today about rescheduling our 10-year anniversary, and I was right before this call looking through people voting on when we should do it and looking at the names and the profile pictures, and I was like, oh my gosh, people have changed so much
yes.
in 10
Well,
years.
I mean, because like I said, I knew you right after high school, and
Yep.
you had that short black hair, you know, and you were very much that pretty boy, like theater kid looking kind of, and that's a compliment. Um, and now, I mean, look at you now, how you've matured into more of a hipster.
I
Like
guess.
you can't acknowledge if you're a hipster because it's not hipster to acknowledge
Sure.
it. Just kidding, you're not a hipster, but you are essentially you are not the same person you were a decade ago. Like
Totally.
I'm not either. Like every decade, I feel like I've developed into a new person. Which I guess when you go into a new phase of your life, you do become a different person. It's like it's like a butterfly or a caterpillar and cocoon butterfly, you know, essentially. All right, let's try and well, that's getting deep. Let's get deep. I love having deep conversations on this podcast, but sometimes it can get real deep.
I mean, there have been so many things said already that I'm like, that could be its own like hour-long tangent. Oh my gosh.
I know I've gotten really good at this. Like if you listen to some of my earlier podcast episodes, I think you'd probably appreciate it because I know that last year, remember when I was having that really bad mental health breakdown and you
Oh
talked
yeah.
to me a lot. You were very helpful. I really want to throw that out there. I want people to know how amazing of a human you are. Like I poured so much drama out to you sometimes and you were just like, yeah, you're doing great. You were just so positive all the time. That was really cool. But like that a lot of people doing that for me last year is what helped me motivate to start this podcast. So
And one of the reasons why I wanted to be on here, I love the idea of someone from the queer community in a small town creating queer media.
I'm trying. It's kind of like I helped start Haven
Yeah.
here in town, and it was a lot of work. There was so much to do, and now this is I don't want to accuse anyone in the group. The active group is still going. I'm not a part of it anymore, and that's okay. But there was for some of the times when I get really emotional, I get sad because I don't feel like I ever got. I don't feel like I ended my time with them. Like I guess didn't feel appreciated.
Hmm.
And that's on me. I'm not like maybe because my expectations of how they should have showed their gratitude didn't happen. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like and that's so I'm trying to learn how to cope with that kind of stuff, but there are some ways where I kind of felt like I was just pushed out of the group, and I'm trying to resolve that with myself a lot, and so it's hard for me. Like I feel like I don't want to have anything to do with Haven, but at the same time this community needs things like Haven, so i I don't know what to say. But yeah, so anyway, they are planning to have the picnic again this summer.
Okay.
And that's a really cool idea, and I hope it goes off well because the last time they did it was pre-pandemic. We probably would have had it last. They probably would have had it last summer too, but obviously couldn't. Um, but they did it right in the central school, so it was right in the center of town,
Hmm.
and so it's really cool that there were so many people that turned out for that too. And so it'd be great to see more people. And I think trying to my biggest like goal was always to make sure that it's marketable to our cisgendered heteronormative allies that do want to support us because I want them to feel welcome because that's how we build that community of people. And there were so many other people that were part of the LGBT. I'm not going to name any names here that felt like they didn't want that. Like they didn't want to build that community, and that made me kind of sad too. Because I'm like, it. I don't like being lumped into a box of assumed other things, and so I don't want to do that to anyone else. I love getting to know straight men. I do, because I like to get to know what life was like for them. And then I get to share my story with them. Sometimes I meet some amazing ones, and then sometimes you meet these douchey ones that just don't care. And then
Sure.
I'm like, okay, we obviously don't vibe. Okay. But I want to take it back because I don't feel like we finished the story about the banners.
Oh, that's true.
I do this a lot, so
That's okay. Um, so yeah, I think I was just, oh yeah. So I had sort of been forced out by accident. My mom, long story, sort of accidentally stumbled upon my private Facebook messages.
okay.
Um, was reading these messages that I had sent to my then first boyfriend. And so I got a text and she was like, "We need to talk." And I went home and I was like, "This is it." And really, it wasn't, it sounds dramatic. I was kicked out of the house for the evening.
Oh,
Was not at all. It wasn't,
okay.
traditional kicked out for being gay story. It was just that um I don't think she was ready to talk about it. And I was like, "Well, you just pushed me out of the closet. It's time to talk about it now on my terms." And she was like, "No, this I'm just not ready." And so then I kind of became a brat. And
And I guess from the experience side, I see your perspective of it. So continue.
so anyway, it I don't want the story to seem like my mom kicked me out for being gay, because that wasn't it. My mom kicked me out for being a brat.
Got it.
And it just got, kind of ugly. And so I remember I stormed over to my dad's house and just showed up sobbing, and he was, of course, wanted to know what was going on. So I finally came out to my dad at that time, and his reaction was very much the same as if I had asked him to pass me the butter at the dinner table. And it was,
That makes sense. Knowing, I mean, I met your fat dad a few times, and yeah.
it was just like, "Oh, okay. You doing okay? Everything fine? All right. Well, I'm tired, so I'm gonna go to bed. And if you need anything." But after that, I mean, everyone in my family has just always been so supportive, my greatest allies. And I was surprised one day when I came home and my dad had put up this big flag. I don't remember what his first flag was, but I assume, or if I remember correctly, it was "Love is Love," and it was a big
Well,
rainbow.
didn't you come out around the same time that the marriage amendment in Minnesota was happening too? Like, wasn't it somewhat in the same?
True. Yep.
So
Oh,
I
yeah.
think,
First big flag. That's right. His first big banner was a big vote no banner on the marriage amendment. Oh,
yeah.
I've forgotten about that. Yes. And so now my dad has sort of a history of these big banners. And it was a few summers ago that they had a big pride flag for Pride Month, and it was torn down in the middle of the night. Um,
And more than once too.
More than once, yeah. And I think, if I remember, more than 1 year too, because
Yeah.
we've done this several years. Well, my dad is a very stubborn person, so he took the "when they go low, we go high" a little too literally and just raised it up in the trees another 20 feet so nobody could reach it this time. But yeah, my dad has just always proudly flown these giant banners, and we had people stopping by from all over the place to take pictures with them.
Yeah.
But that
And
ended
then
up being sort of a big moment in the community when it was torn down, because at one
it,
point the Grand Rapids Police Department commented about it on Facebook and
I
said,
remember.
"This is technically a hate crime," and whatever.
Oh,
Uh,
and the community that was against us, that was showing their hatred, was
yeah,
jumped on that like, what?
it
Ah.
was it was rough. Yeah, there was a lot of hatred spewing out of just the weirdest corners of our town at that time. And I mean, I remember I spent just hours and hours a day just trying to sort of, um, I don't know, be like an admin of this single post and just be like, "Yo, this is getting to be a lot." Um, and that was sort of, I mean, at the time, that felt like a really big victory for me, that the police department had said something not even necessarily in our favor, but was just willing to defend.
They at least acknowledged
Yeah,
it, and that was important. And it was important, and it brought a lot of different people to, like, I think I helped organize with Tracy the picture where we all met up, and
Oh, yep,
that
that's
you showed up, and and then I think you're yeah, there was different. We had just so many different people from the community. Some people I'd never even met that were all coming in. We took this big picture in front of it. Once your dad put up the newest one,
yeah.
which I think I've seen now where that one hangs, because I know that your sister was a little bit scared to have it up for too long because of some of the hate.
Yeah, it was getting to be kind of scary just knowing that there were people sort of, especially if after it happened more than once, just knowing that people were lurking and waiting for an opportunity. We just didn't know whether or not that was going to escalate as we, continued to move the flag higher and keep replacing it, whether their actions were going to, increase in intensity and whether that would leave my family unsafe. So,
Now there
um,
was one time where you guys put out a camera, right, or something? Didn't you
we
guys?
did have a camera, yeah.
I remember.
I know that I'm pretty sure we identified at least one person who was responsible for that, but I don't
Oh,
remember how that part of the story goes, to be
I was
honest.
gonna say I don't remember any charges being filed or anything.
I don't think we were really concerned with that. It was mostly just, I think it
That you
was some,
wanted.
I honestly, I think it was a kid, and I think they like lived down the street or something. But our
Yeah.
goal to ruin anyone's life over a flag. We just wanted to bring some awareness to the community and be supportive. And
Well, and that's where I always loved seeing that that thing with the community, and it really did help bring Haven together a lot more, and the LGBT and that stuff. Because yeah, that was a couple years. That was 2 years ago, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yes, um, yes. I was wearing my um, pride skirt. That yeah,
That's right.
yeah, because it was. But yeah, anyway. So that's the thing, is that I noticed is, like, we have so many amazing people compared to when I lived here in my younger days. Um, and now there's so many more people out and proud, gay, trans. I mean, so many. There's still, and then there's still a lot that are not as out and proud. I mean, trust me, the dating pool up here, like when I still go on the apps that gay
Yep.
men like to go on, but most of the people that are on there are closet, discreet people.
Yeah.
And some of my paranoia, because I have been attacked before. Um, some of my paranoia is that some of these people are like trying to bait gay men into going, and like something, something as bad as like Matthew Shepard could happen, because
Sure.
there's enough of those hateful people in this community that I would never be shocked if that stuff would happen. So I'm always leery about actually meeting up with anyone,
Yeah.
unless we're going to meet at a restaurant and talk, you know. But um, but there's so many great people, but there's still so much hatred here, and so it's tough to live here. And I think the way my mental health has kind of been going since I moved home, I don't know if it's always the healthiest place I should be at, but I haven't made myself a plan on what to do next. So working on that. My goal is to try and figure out what I want, if I want to stay here or be gone by the time I'm 40. So I got 2 years.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one of the things that, thinking about growing up in the Grand Rapids area, kind of going back to what we were just talking about with the flag situation is, we get these little victories, but they're never quite substantial enough. And so, like, when the Grand Rapids Police Department posted about the flag, I remember thinking how sad it was that that had to be a victory at all, because it was literally the least they could do to
Right.
just post and say, this was illegal. Can you help us find, whoever did this? And
I
then
mean, even though they were going at mostly with vandalism, I think mostly, but I do remember that somehow there was hate crime, because by Minnesota state law, I think, because it was specifically LGBT and somebody did this, it automatically gets labeled as a hate crime, no matter who did it.
and then just as soon as that post started to really kind of blow up, then it just disappeared. And I might
Oh, that's right.
I might be misremembering this, but I believe I remember hearing too that right around the same time, I think it might have been Haven or some other group was planning, maybe it was the picnic, and they had asked for police presence, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it because they didn't want it to be seen as like
Political.
endorsing or, some sort of, yeah, political motive.
Yep. We were trying to bring the whole community together while we were planning that picnic. We invited the fire department. We just wanted the community to be present, and it wasn't meant to be a political thing in the sense of just being that fact that our police officers support our community, every single person, and they don't necessarily mean they have to accept that gay is whatever if they have a Christian value, but as long as they're doing their job. But we already know for other circumstances that the police system is flawed no matter where, you
Yeah.
know,
And
and it does.
that's what's really frustrating about, I mean, not just small town living, but specifically about small town living is that, you know, our identities are seen as so political that even
I
get
always say,
community involved.
well, I always say that sometimes I'm like, my existence is a political statement. Like when people are like, why do you have to make a political statement? I'm like, my existence is a political statement. I might as well pour some sugar on it.
And
Might as well put some makeup on while I do it.
not that we have it the worst of any marginalized community, but even still, it is exhausting constantly being seen as some sort of political body.
All the time. But I try to. That's why I try to go with it to my benefit. Like since I have the personality that likes to talk, since I have the personality that wants to be in the center spotlight, I'm willing to be that kind of voice piece, especially in our community. And I think in some ways I am, and I think it's like important because I mean I identify as genderqueer, non-binary, but I still when I explain it to people, like it's not for you. Like people are like, I don't really understand. I'm like, well, you don't have to. Like you asked, I explained. I'm like, I don't really have to sit here and explain to you at all what my identity is. Like
Mhm.
that, I'm doing that as a favor to you so that you can understand a little bit more about me and we can have a conversation as two human beings and learn from each other. But instead, it's always being shoved down their throat because who I am and stuff like that. And it's just like you can't win. You can. There's no way you can
No.
win with conversations with people about it. And I give up a lot. But I'm like, I come back to the podcast and I'm like, I'm going to have these conversations here, and whoever wants to listen can listen. You know, and this way, I'm not forcing anybody to do anything. Listen to my stories, listen to my friends' stories. We have experiences. I mean, my podcast goes from LGBT things to mental health, like to just daily living. Like, I don't like to be limited to one or another. And
Totally.
that's why the podcast is called To Be Fair, because I'm like, there's so much to talk about. Um, and so I like when we can talk about the fact that I do love living in a small community and doing the kind of art where I am because it's like I get to be a big fish in a small pond, you know. But with that comes one a responsibility to the people who support you, because I feel like there's a brand image that I make for myself that's supposed to be inspiring. And sometimes I worry that if I come off too negative, that if people are going to start to get mad at me for that. Like I overthink it because I have had somebody that because I disagreed with them on something, Black Lives Matter related, of course, they went onto my podcast page. I think you know about this. They went onto the
Oh,
page,
yeah.
yeah, and I think a lot of you guys came on to help get my rating back up because she was so mad at me for disagreeing with her on something and making it very like, and I might have talked a little condescendingly to her, but it didn't seem like she was understanding any other language.
Hmm.
So, because I was like, I understood her perspective, like like she made her point, and I understood what her point was, but I was trying to explain why, with that logic, this is what that means. I think by your own logic, then here. It's the same conversation I have with people about the Bible and being gay as a sin. I'm like, okay, well, so you're going to cherry pick that one, but how about this? What about that one? What about this here? How about that? Hey, what about just loving thy neighbor? Isn't that like the main one? Like, isn't that the main lesson from it all? Like, maybe you should just shut up. You know, it's it's just it's there's so many arguments that aren't worth having but still need to be had. So unfortunately, I can't reach everyone. Not everyone's going to understand me, but there's going to be so many people that do, that might be able to get inspired to tell their version of the story that might vibe with somebody that I don't. That's
Yeah.
my goal here, is the fact that I don't want to be the hero of everybody, like, and try to change the world by myself. I want to inspire others to change the world with me. That's always been my goal. And I look at it as the fact that in the same way I get to benefit because I always wanted to be famous. That was one of my goals. I wanted to create like art, like by performance art, like comedy and stuff. I get to do that. But at the same time, I also get to share stories, and I get to talk with people like you about things like this. And we get to like learn and grow, because one thing I can say, even though it's changed a lot in the last decade for sure, is the gay community, the queer community, the LGBTQ community has, I feel like when I first joined it back in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, like 2005, 2006, when I first moved down to Duluth and Superior, and I actually started working at the gay bar at the time. Like right now, it's the main club and the Flame are the
Yeah.
two popular. Well, at the time, there was one called JT's, and I worked there as a cocktail server on Friday and Saturday nights. And I mean, at the time, credit cards were still not really being taken by a lot of places yet, so people had to pay cash. So I made some pretty good tips. But
Sure.
then all of a sudden they started like they started taking credit cards and they'd have tabs, and then it was really hard to tell because like if people wanted to use our tab when I would serve them, I would have to go tell them, and then I wouldn't get. And then if they didn't tip me there, I wouldn't get tipped out by the bartender. So it changed everything. That's not even the point of this story. That wasn't the point of the story. The point of the story is that at that time, I remember being a part of a community down there in the Duluth Superior area and getting to know all these different gay people, LGBT. Mostly it was gays and lesbians. It was still kind of a world where there were transgender people in there, but it was almost like we were still kind of excluding them back then too. Which honestly, there's still a really bad exclusiveness in the LGBTQ
I was going to say, you know where I've experienced the most homophobia and racism and transphobia, period,
it's in the gay community.
is in our own community.
Yeah,
It's
I
awful.
it is terrible, and for some reason, I think some people who do it, they feel like they're able to get away with it more because it's from a place of love.
It's not
Like
even from a place of love.
it's not. I know it's
Go
not,
on
but
any one of those apps and you see people explicitly tell you, I will not even consider talking to you if you are this race or this
oh
weight
yeah, or and then
or this
or
identity.
and then mask for mask only. Like
Yeah. Oh my God, the eye roll that I'm experiencing right now. I'm so over it.
yeah,
Like, yeah, that's the most frustrating thing for me is that then you finally find your community and they suck. Obviously,
yes.
not all of them, but
Now, yeah, I want you to remember that there was a time where it felt like there was, and that was with the generation that fought a lot more for a lot more of the civil rights that we have. Um, and that generation is kind of seniored out a lot, and so we're left with the ones of us who are benefiting from their fight, you know. And then I got to fight a different battle, which was marriage
mhm,
equality. That was part of my generation's fight, and now this next generation that's growing, they're like, and you're seeing them as they're coming into the age that they're dating and coming onto our apps officially,
sure.
and like you see how they like are just so exclusive, and it breaks my heart because there's already plenty of us in our different age ranges that are already racist and transphobic and self-hating in some ways, and
Mm,
like it, there's nothing worse than a homophobic homosexual.
absolutely. Yeah, I never want to see the words mask for mask again.
Thank you. Because I mean, for me, it's always been that thing where like I tend to be attracted to the more masculine type of man.
Sure.
Like I want a lumberjack, but I kind of want them to look like Chris Hemsworth.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, but
It's okay to be Chris Hemsworth sexual.
Oh, I think that's fair for anyone who identifies as straight and a normal. Like, I think we can all agree that pretty much any of those Marvel men, like Chris Evans, like, come
Yeah.
on. I mean, no one is gonna like, no one is gonna stop you from being sexually attracted to Chris Evans, no matter what your actual identity is. I'm sorry. I mean, that's America's ass.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, it's been so good to like chat with you about a lot of this stuff and just really catch up for one. I mean, we don't get to talk as much anyway, except I only get to talk to you a lot when you used to come into the restaurant.
Oh, that's
Or
true.
yeah, and then you moved and we talked even less. But that's cool. I should definitely invite you to be on this podcast more when we talk about other things. I love having
Sure.
fresh voices and fresh perspectives. Um, and yeah, but right now, I mean, happy Pride Month. It's like okay. One thing, sign up because it's Minnesota goodbye time. Um, is let's talk a little bit about this capitalism and pride. Like, I just want to touch on that subject because it's a big deal this year. For some reason, it's people. Okay, I'm going to talk about it from this perspective of the to be fair perspective. Now, back, like I say, my generation, when I was first a young little gay boy in the gay community and stuff, we were working at trying to get visibility in a larger level so that people saw us. We're here, we're queer style. That was our gay agenda,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And now we're at that point where Target sponsors proudly Best Buy, Wells Fargo, so many different corporate sponsors, and then you're like, I know Kellogg's has their controversial Pride cereal this year. And
Oh, I see that.
yeah,
Okay.
and there was somebody who's like, "Oh my God, are we gonna let Kellogg sexualize our children's cereal?" And so everyone's like, "All it's saying is all inclusive cereal. I mean, it's meant to be LGBTQ, but
Sure.
there's nothing on it. It's just showing like all the different Kellogg's characters on there being all inclusive, and it's like, where is there anything sexy about this?" Like people, like literally, conservatives are so angry, and it's not because of anything, but the fact that it's because of a political statement. It feels like it's being forced. I'm like, I'm sorry if making you want to love everybody and be kind to others and accept other people for their difference is such a political statement that it makes you so angry that you can't even see past your own hatred. Like, I'm sorry, but you're a lost cause in this world. I don't want anything to do with your world. So don't, no, no. If you're not willing to grow and learn. So, okay, but that's another point. We're off on topic. We're supposed to go back to corporate. Okay, it's like, so like, but all these companies have come off into, showing their support. Like, I bought this shirt at Target. I like this shirt. I like Target. I don't care if it's a marketing scheme for them to do it. The point of the matter is they're doing it. They
Mm-hmm.
can be they can risk, I mean, they can risk losing a lot of customers, but they also know what they're gaining and keeping by having the loyalty from the LGBT community. And there's nothing wrong with that. If they want something in it for them, that's a business move, but it's a smart business move because it also shows that you support and you donate money to like Trevor Project and stuff like that. That means that you're showing that inclusivity. Like, people are not looking past all that, seeing that all these like companies like Apple has come out with their new wristbands and it's big, like every year it's the new Pride wristband, and I'm like, this was the visibility we wanted. And now that we have it, you think that people like they're you don't realize that there's not a price to this, and it's a price worth paying. We're in a capitalist society. To gain the type of visibility we have to think like on a capitalist mind. It's
Sure.
it's the no brainer.
I guess, I mean, I see the posts every year complaining about how empty these gestures are, and I guess I haven't really formed too much of my own opinion about it.
I
I think
didn't until this
overall,
year, but
overall, I think that it's nice that we can have this continued visibility, and I think that the people who are complaining about it are generally, anyway, the people who grew up never having to fight for that visibility. And so I can see where, for a lot of people, it's a really big deal to see a piece of them represented by Target or Absolute Vodka or whatever the brand is. And I mean, it's like, is that really the battle? that we need to pick. I mean, certainly it's important that we tell the stories of, the people who fought for these freedoms for us, um, and to know our history. But sometimes I think we pick some silly fights.
Agreed. Agreed. That is 100% agreed, and I think we can wrap it up on that. Because I mean, sometimes we just have some silly fights, and I don't want to be fighting with people over pride, like during pride.
Sure.
Like I feel like I've already started getting way too aggressive with people on social media. Um, yeah, I'm going to be toning my social media presence back a little bit more and only sharing and posting podcast stuff out there. And people who want to follow my stuff can come to my Instagram, my TikTok, and of course here, my podcast. And I need more people to engage. I want to know what people think of the podcast. No one really gives me any feedback ever on these episodes.
Hmm.
So that reminds me, those of you that are watching, don't forget, if you're watching or listening, wherever we are at, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, tell your friends about us, what we do. We'll be back with brand new episodes of the regular season, probably at the end of summer. I'd expect us. But for now, we're gonna have the rest of this month full of different specials with different LGBT members. And so for now, today, I want to thank Nate for joining us, Mr. Nathan MacDowell, a friend of mine from Grand Rapids, living in Minneapolis, but still, home is here for you in a way.
That's true.
Yeah, so thank you again for joining here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you so much. All right.